to say a word about me.
Good morning, everyone. And we are about to call the Port Manatee Port Authority meeting to order. We will start this morning with an invocation by Reverend Alan Ho, and following that, we will have our Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, thank you for having me here, chaplain at Anchor House. Just to say, 322 vaccines have happened on board ships or for seafarers because you've allowed us to do that, and we got some more later this week, so we'll probably pass 350. Let us pray. Gracious God, we are blessed to have good people to work together with in this group. We thank you for this port and all it does to supply people with the goods and services that they need to keep their lives going, for hard goods and foods and all those who labor to make it happen. We are blessed, and we thank you, O God, for giving us strength and energy to carry out the duties that we have. Now be upon this governmental body as they serve in the ways that they can, to think together, to work together. We pray together, and we know, O God, with your guidance and help, we can do our very best. We pray in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yeah, wait till you have a seat. Now we will have introductions. I'll pass it.
Yes.
Carlos.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Really delightful to have you back. I know our customers appreciate it. It's wonderful. It's been, since March of last year. However, your port authority, your port has continued to operate uninterruptedly. In fact, business expanded during this pandemic. Port staff was here essentially 24/7. We didn't close for ELSA. We wouldn't close for COVID. And so commerce needed to continue to flow because there's a tremendous now shortage of goods and services, especially from the Far East. And as you know, we first did the toilet paper, and we get other shortages now with chips, for phones and materials. However, the port was essentially handling additional commodities to make sure that those manufacturers were able to have the materials to be able to supply the goods, to be able to supply the customers. And so this is what makes it happen, and the companies here are part of that chain. And the Port Authority essentially is leading the policy of the port to be able to facilitate that. Okay, the gates again open 24/7, and the gasoline that comes out of here again flows 24/7 because it's an essential commodity. So the port plays, and you as the Port Authority, an integral role in really the services and goods that people buy, both at the stores and at the gas station, and throughout not just Manatee County, but all the way down to Lee County and even into Collier County. So we are the port for all of that region. There'll be no other port likely ever be built between here and, let's say, Collier County. So we're expanding rapidly, and with your support, we'll continue to do that over the coming years. With that, Mr. Chairman, perhaps you want to call for self-introductions.
Yes, at this time.
Okay. We'll start. Introductions. Self-introductions. Oh, with the mic. Yeah. Yeah, of course. Well, let's do it.
Okay.
It's okay.
Dave Sanford, Port Staff.
Jennifer Cowan, Port Council. Denise Stuffelbeam, Port Staff.
Charles Tillotson, Port Staff.
Malcolm Edwards, Port Staff.
Alan Howe, Anchor House Executive Director.
Teresa Doherty, Port Staff.
David St. Pierre, Port Staff.
George Eisenminger, Port Staff.
Keith Robbins, FDOT.
Ivan Mutis, GML consultant and international trade hub at Port Manatee.
Troy Layton, Federal Marine Terminals.
Mo Moravchek, port staff.
Rachel Gallant, Port Security.
Malika Ware, port staff.
Terry Fluke, Tampa Bay Pilots.
Norman Atkins, Marine Towing Tug Provider here at Port Manatee.
Joseph Bernhardt, Aceros Americas.
Diego Rospide, Corporación Aceros Arequipa.
Carlos Diaz, World Direct Shipping.
Josh Hendry, Transmontane.
Julie Jensvold, Clerk Staff.
Susan Butts, clerk staff.
John Moore, Port Staff.
And at this time, we'll go to public comment.
Yes, if you wish to call for public comment now, Mr. Chair, you can do that.
Do we have any public comments? Public comments have been open and closed. I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We have a couple of employee recognitions. As you know, one of our strengths is that people stay at the port for many, many years. In fact, they retire from the port. I think the port has, been for them and continues to be really a home and a way to make a very living family wage. I see the clerk has just come in. Okay. And so with that, I would like to make two employee recognition presentations, and I'll have the supervisor for that department come on over. Okay.
Okay, our first person being recognized is, good morning, I'm Dave St. Pierre, Director of Public Safety and Security. I'd like to introduce first Rachel Gallant. Rachel has been with us for 5 years. She came to us with absolutely no security experience at all. But I am happy to note that she has become one of our essential access control staff. She is one of our TWIC trusted agents. In fact, many of you have probably held her hand and been processed in that during that TWIC process. So, Rachel, it's fabulous to have you here for this long. Okay, next I'd like to introduce Malika Ware. Malika has been with us for 15 years, and Malika and I go back a little further than that. Malika is the only person in my staff that still remembers me when I was in the Coast Guard.
Oh.
Okay, she used to work security up the cruise terminals up in the north. Once we had an opening, I actually sought Malika out to bring her here. Okay, she is an excellent part of our staff. She is actually one of our access control enrollment staff. 15 years. Thank you, Malika.
Hey.
And we have a commissioner on the board, Commissioner Ball.
Yeah, Rachel and Malaka. Did I say that right? Okay. Welcome. And I can't believe 5 years and 15 years. Congratulations. You know what? It is so good for the Port Authority to be back here this morning and be able to see y'all in person. I've been here a few times, but it's never the same as being in this room together. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? And we just want to tell you all thanks for everything you do and keep up the good work.
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
We're just switching the mics, METV, although we're not broadcasting live, just so you know, it's taped, later shown on the channel on television, and then you can also watch it on YouTube, but it's not live, so just FYI. We had a little equipment concern, so I had to switch mics here. So if you forgive me for just a second while I'm trying to make sure that this works. Okay. Security. The security department, just as a refresher, is one of the best security departments, port security, in the entire U.S. And why do I say that? Because we have been designated the port for training the trainers, for authorizing the port security officers, including, as you know, we train the FBI in port security too here. So obviously the trust that the federal agencies have put on the port is significant, and that, all, with David St. Pierre, who's been here and a former Coast Guard, is really an honor to have this kind of tight security that essentially guarantees the safety and security of the rest of the country as goods come in through, from foreign lands into the port. Next, we have a presentation by Norm Atkins from Marine Towing. And so, as you all know, towboats. Towing boats, now they call them tractor tugs. The equipment has essentially over the years increased exponentially in its capability to move ships around. Every port has at least one or two tug companies, and Norm has been there for many, many years. Essentially, his company aids the ships as they navigate up the channel from here and onward. And so Norm, and I thought it would be timely for him to give a presentation on what's happening in Tampa Bay, in particular at Port Manatee with the tugs.
Thank you, Carlos, commissioners, Mr. Chairman, guests. My name is Norman Atkins, Vice President at Marine Towing. We thank you for the opportunity for us to tell you a little bit about marine towing and exactly what we do. Marine towing was established in October of 1999. We are locally owned and operated by a group that includes veterans of the ship docking industry dating back to the 1960s. Currently, we have 48 employees. Our primary function is docking and undocking all types of ships and barges with all types of cargo throughout Tampa Bay to include Port Manatee and Port Tampa Bay. Always working closely together with the Tampa Bay pilots to ensure that vessels move safely and on a timely manner. Our tugs work around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and receive orders for their next job from our 24-hour dispatch office. Tugs are crewed with a captain, a mate, engineer, and a deckhand. Crews work a 7-day on, 7-day off schedule and always report to the same tug. I'm proud to say that over the past 20 years, Marine Towing has provided tug services at Port Manatee, for which we are very grateful for. Marine Towing has signed towage contracts with many vessels with many different owners throughout different countries. I started working in the marine industry in 1978 for a towing company in Tampa called St. Philip Towing. At that time, St. Philip Towing also operated a tugboat company in Port Manatee called Manatee Tug and Barge Lines, which was a division of St. Philip Towing. I have remained working in the industry ever since. Can we move to the next slide? There you go. Let's do the next one. Here, I'm going to show you a few of our tugs that we operate here at Port Manatee. This is the Tug Liberty. She was built in 2007. She's 5,000 horsepower. Her length is 92 feet. Her beam is 32 feet, and she has firefighting capabilities. Wow. Next, please. This is the Tug Patriot. The Tug Patriot was built in 2013. She's 93 feet long by 38 foot wide and has firefighting capabilities, and she's also 5,000 horsepower. Next, please. This is the Tug Freedom. She's a sister tug to the Liberty. She was built in 2005. She's also 5,000 horsepower, and she's 92 feet long by 32 feet wide. Next, please. This is the Endeavor. The Endeavor was built in 2000. She's 4,200 horsepower. She's 90 feet long by 50 feet wide. Next, please. And this is the Independent. This is our newest tug. She was built in 2017. She's also 93 feet long by 38 feet wide and 5,000 horsepower. And she also has firefighting capabilities. All tugs are equipped with firefighting capabilities. New construction costs for tugs such as these range from anywhere from $8 to $12 million. So it's a very big investment for the towing company. Tugs today are very comfortable. The kitchen, or better known as the galley, has all the comforts that you have at your home. A stove, a refrigerator, a coffee pot, a microwave, and of course, plenty of food provided by the company. All crews have their own room with a television and internet access. This is a chart of Lower Tampa Bay. To give you some perspective, this is the Sunshine Skyway Bridge. This is Port Manatee. This is Egmont Key, and this is Egmont Channel. Beyond Egmont Channel would be the Gulf of Mexico, where all the ships enter into the main ship channel. So the ships enter into what they call buoys 1 and 2 Egmont Channel. They continue up this 700-foot wide channel until the pilot boards the ship roughly at buoys 9 and 10 Egmont. The pilot is now in control of the ship, so he continues in Egmont Channel. This channel turns into another channel called Mullet Key. Now it's 600 foot wide. And then just before you go under the Skyway Bridge, the channel is 500 foot wide. And the ships continue here into B Cut. And just prior to the ship arriving in the Port Manatee Channel, the tugs typically meet the ship in B Cut to get the lines up and get made up and help the ship make its turn into Port Manatee Channel. But the most ships, we go alongside here in B Cut. There's a lot of ships that come into Port Manatee that might be smaller. They can make this turn without a tug, and so we usually meet them in the turning basin at Port Manatee. So, and there's Terry, with the executive director with the Tampa Bay Pilots. I don't want to steal his thunder, but there are 20 pilots that are utilized at Port Manatee, Port Tampa Bay, and all of Tampa Bay. From buoys 1 and 2, the distance in miles from buoy 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 is about 25 miles, or about 3 hours. So when the pilot gets on board at buoys 9 and 10 Egmont to the berth at Port Manatee is about 3 hours. Beyond Port Manatee, if you're heading north into these different channels to Port Tampa Bay, it's about another 23 miles to Tampa. So the pilot boat typically picks up the pilot at Fort DeSoto and transports the pilot to the ship. And once he gets on board, he's 100% in control of the vessel. Any questions about the chart?
So I have a question.
Okay.
So typically, there's a certain wind speed, or a certain, for every port, right, it's a little different, a certain direction the wind's coming from at a certain speed, in which the tugs, will go out there to assist, or a certain wind speed at which the port closes. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, for the port to close, or for us not to be able to handle a ship, the weather's got to be pretty severe. So
is there a certain?
No,
standard?
not really. Not that I'm aware of, unless Terry can elaborate. But no, not really. It's a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Even in the afternoon storms in the summertime, unless it's severe, the tugs are out there making up to the ship and assisting the ship to the dock.
Is there a certain wind speed where typically, the tugs are going to go out to help almost any vessel make the turn, or to help keep them in that cut channel?
Well, basically the ships that are loaded that come to Port Manatee, like the tankers that are loaded, they all want the tugs in B cut. Prior to the turn into Port Manatee. We put a line up on the ship, both tugs put a line up on the ship, and we can control the ship 100%.
Sure.
And then we help it make its turn into Port Manatee. But I mean, it'd have to be blowing 40 miles per hour for it to not be able to come in to the dock.
Okay, thanks.
So, yeah. But any further questions about that?
Any more commissioners? Commissioner Ball?
Yeah, I would just say that for our new Port Authority members that have not been on one of the tugs, it is amazing. You need to take a tour whenever you get an opportunity.
Yeah, we
It's
would
amazing.
we would love to do that. Right now with the COVID-19, it's more difficult to do that because we just can't afford to have someone be get affected by the COVID and shut one of the tugs down. So when things settle down, we would encourage that. It is quite remarkable to watch. It is. We've had some commissioners on board in the past, so
Loved it.
it's so different from the water side. You see so much of this business from the shore side, but when you see it from the boat side, it's a totally different animal. So, but I would like to mention that, you know, over the past several years, I've had the pleasure of witnessing Port Manatee grow and create new jobs year after year, and from our side, it's really remarkable what Carlos and his staff has been able to do, because our number of tug jobs down here has increased so much over the last couple of years. We're here all the time, and that's what everybody wants. So, but you know, my hat's off to the staff. They've worked countless hours and dedicated their hours to building this port. And I was just telling Carlos this morning that one of our owners, who just turned 80 years old, he was actually the captain on the tug that docked the very first ship that came into Port Manatee, which is pretty amazing. He was a high school student working on the tugboat, so he's been in the business 60 years. So it's, and like I started in 1978, but I was around the port because my brother was a captain down here on one of the tugs, and my other brother was an operations manager. So probably in the mid-'70s, 1974, 75, I remember what Port Manatee used to look like, and it was nothing that looks like today at all. So they've done a really remarkable job. So, but I also want to say to everyone at Port Manatee that Marine Towing values our long-standing relationship with the port and will forever provide the type of service you expect and require from the tugboats. We really appreciate the business down here. It's really good.
Well,
Thank you.
do we have a commissioner want to comment?
I just said thank you.
Mr. Atkins, we thank you for your service, your 20 years of commitment to the port. And you gave us some great information, just breaking the different tugs down and their capability.
Right.
That was very enlightening and informing to me, to be honest with you. And COVID has taken a lot away from us. I would have probably challenged to go out on a tour so I can experience that. I'm sure that'd probably be a lot of fun. If you all do have opportunity to open it back up, please let me know. I don't know whether or not other commissioners are concerned, but a good day's fun on the water is always good.
Yes.
Based on some of the things we encounter day in and day out. But again, we just want to say, on behalf of the Port Authority, thank you for all the stuff that you do to make a difference.
Well, thank you. And we'll definitely put a trip together when things settle down a little bit. We'll definitely do that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay. So the other side of the coin are the pilots. And the pilots, of course, perform the function that Norm mentioned to you about, which is essentially guiding the ship to its final docking position and moving the ship from its current port position out to the main channel. They're specialists in this. They're state certified to do that job. It's very stressful, obviously, but I've been suggesting to the pilots that if you could put the map back up, Tampa Bay map, please. To make it easier on Norm and the rest of the pilots, I plan to put a sign up here called no exit. They don't need to go any further. We'll double your salary.
Can I get that?
Yeah. So,
No
kidding.
further north.
Just exactly, the dead end, cul-de-sac, whatever you want to call it.
Cul-de-sac.
So this is certainly, because it is, obviously, the further you fill up, the higher the risk of accidents. And so, again, as the tagline that was here way before I came, Port Manatee, the right turn on Tampa Bay, the pilots appreciate that. And so they can make the same amount of money by going 25 miles, 30 miles, and going 55 miles. We need to talk about it this, yeah. So, come. So,
Your slogan, right?
the right turn.
We do make left-hand turns. It's the right left-hand turn.
Thank you very much.
Carlos, does the channel tighten once you pass Port Manatee? Because it sort of looks like it does on the map.
It certainly does.
It does, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
what's the width?
It actually varies. There are some areas of the channel that are 400 feet wide north of Port Manatee.
Okay.
So yeah, there's varying widths, and I'm going to talk about that.
We could get an ad campaign sponsored by like Morgan & Morgan maybe and tell them about the risk of going further.
No. My membership would not like any type of an ad campaign. Morgan & Morgan. So,
Okay. Thank you. It's all yours. Thank you.
Good morning, board. Good morning, distinguished Port Manatee management and my colleagues in industry in the back. Appreciate being here today. Okay, and I'm gonna add a little bit. Actually, I've got a slide similar to Norman's. If we can load up the slides I brought, I can go into a little more detail on one of the commissioner questions on weather conditions and so forth. Again, I'm Terry Fluke, Executive Director, Tampa Bay Pilots Association. I've only been in this role for a little over a year and a half. I've got 36 years working in the port community to the north, but I've been down here in Manatee, obviously visiting. I've been in meetings here. I know a lot of the staff. Dave St. Pierre and I go way back. Scott Davies, he is not here. Malcolm, Dave, Carlos. So I've got quite a bit of varied experience in the port, and the pilots approached me about a year and a half ago to be the executive director. So here I am. Norman and I have known each other since we were young and handsome rascals, and 36 years in maritime operations. This is what happens, right, Norman? So, anyway, let me get into the PowerPoint here. A little bit of history of.
It's okay.
Okay. A little bit of history of the Pilots Association. It was founded in 1886 based on Egmont Key, which is where it is still based. Actually, there were pilots on Egmont Key prior to 1886. The association was formed then. Lighthouse on Egmont Key prior to 1886 provided some form of pilotage services and handed out maps to mariners. And there was actually a Spanish pilot, sea captain, who originally mapped Egmont Key in, I believe it was 1757, Don Francisco Mariacelli originally mapped Egmont Key. So that is still our base of operations. Obviously, we have an office up in the port to the north. I'll go real quickly through this one since Norman stole my thunder on the channel map. There's a total of 70 plus or minus 70 miles of navigable channels in the port. Again, we take ships not only to Port Manatee, but we take ships up into this area and obviously up into Port Tampa. Ship channels plus the ship channel from the sea buoy up into Ybor is plus or minus 44 miles. Again, varying widths of the channel all the way in and out. The side channels, Manatee is an auxiliary channel. You've got the Big Bend channel, you've got Alafia channel, and then the channel going over into Old Port Tampa. And that's where you get into some of the 400-foot wide channels that are north of here. Manatee Channel, for example, is 400 feet wide once you turn off the main ship channel. Again, our pilots talked a little bit about weather conditions. It's a lot of transit time. Everyone here, I assume, has been in Florida for a while. You know how thunderstorms kick up, weather systems in the wintertime coming across. So it can be challenging for pilots, tugboat operators, and vessel masters. There you go. There's a good picture, and that's a fairly recent picture of a ship that gets caught in fog. Fog is probably one of the scarier situations that the pilots run into because it happens quickly. And once you're, especially with a large vessel, once you're inbound or outbound, you got to go the whole way. There's no places to pull over, pull out. You run into fog, you get through it, or other weather conditions. Again, a 600-foot vessel, deep draft, you can't turn it around in the channel. You're in the chute and you got to go. Here's how we do our job, and I'm going to probably go through this fairly quickly, but please interrupt me if you want any details, or I can go back to slides later. The pilots carry portable pilot units on vessels. It's basically an Apple laptop. It's loaded with some pretty sophisticated navigation equipment that shows them their positioning in the channel, shows them their track as they're going up the channel, shows them any other traffic along the channel. It gives them a wealth of information to basically keep that ship safely in the channel and obviously away from any moored vessels. So every time a pilot goes on board, he's got his Apple laptop. It's actually integrated into whatever vessel he's on into their system, so he can actually see some information specific to that vessel that he's on. And that is that piece of equipment is critical for these folks to do their job. Now we're getting close to Port Manatee, and this is a screenshot from the same portable pilot unit that they carry. This is a good picture to show a couple things. I'm going to get over here so I don't block it. Obviously, this is a good day in Port Manatee. Those are actual vessels berthed at Port Manatee. And one of the things I want to kind of show, it's a good story for Port Manatee, and Norman alluded to it. 10 years ago, if you were to visit Port Manatee, you'd maybe have 1 or 2 vessels at a berth. This is what we see routinely. This is not an anomaly in this day and age at Port Manatee. This is weekly. What our folks have to do, and we do it with the help of the tugboats, and you can see a couple of them here. These are actual vessels, of course. You got a tugboat down here. You got 2 tugboats over here. This vessel is heading outbound. It's being turned outbound, and I honestly don't know whether this one is docking or undocking, but that's the sort of orchestration that has to take place to get vessels in and out of Port Manatee. And Port Sutton up to the north is similar to that type situation. So again, none of this happens. Norman alluded to it. There's a lot of communication, orchestration. It starts with tugboat dispatchers. It starts with our dispatchers, CVTS, and then the tugboat captains and the pilots are talking to each other, especially when they're in this routine. They're on the VHF radios talking to each other constantly, because we got to get them in or get them out timely, of course, and it does require a lot of skill, work, and coordination between pilot, tugboat, and others. This is a very recent picture, and John Moore's going to like this one, because this is the Star Lowen. This was, I guess, a couple months ago now. This is the skill that's required to park vessels in Port Manatee. You can see the 2 screenshots, and again, this is off of a pilot PPU. And I'll go back to saying, you know, the critical importance of these computer devices that pilots use. They can see, obviously, when they're moving in a channel, they can see everything, but they can also see everything while they're docking to check clearances between vessels. And this is berth 10, that's probably an ATB, this is the Star Lowen, and then we had I forget the vessel that was at berth 8. But for those of you who are my age, I use the term shoehorn. We're shoehorning a vessel in to berth 9. And the clearances, I can tell you the clearances on this vessel were 40 feet and 20 feet, 600-foot vessels. And it's the skill of the master, it's the skill of the pilot, and it's the skill of those tugboat operators to shoehorn that vessel in. And again, it's a good story for Manatee because you're that busy. And again, this is a different day than the previous slide, and you can see, you know, you've got 5 vessels in Port Manatee. Let's see, we talked about weather. The other thing that our pilots use on a every voyage basis comes from ports. The port system has been, I think we just passed our 30-year anniversary of ports here in Tampa Bay. They can dial the ports up. Ports is meteorological data, tides, winds. I think the commissioner asked about winds. I'll give a more definitive answer on winds. A pilot can decline to do a job for any reason at any time based on safety or weather considerations. So they do utilize ports, they check winds, they see what's going on, they see what the tides are doing in and out of Manatee, and the pilot has to make an educated decision. Is it safe to take that vessel into Manatee, or to Port Sutton to the north, or to Big Bend? So they do, you know, they do utilize all this technology to make the decision, especially on weather events. Windage, typically, if it gets up around gale force winds, up around 35 knots, that's when you're going to see ships stop moving. And part of the reason is because 35 knot winds out where we have to get pilots on and off ships, you're probably exceeding 6 feet of waves of 6 feet, so it becomes dangerous for boarding and disembarking for pilots. Yes, ma'am.
Layman's terms, what are knots per, like miles per hour?
Close, let's just say 35 miles an hour.
Okay.
It's
Same?
close, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks.
So they constantly use ports to monitor all of that data, and that also plays into tugboat usage. Do I want 1 tugboat or 2 tugboats? And in Port Manatee, winds can be a decision, or are a decision factor on whether that pilot's going to want 1 or 2 tugboats. Because again, not a criticism of Port Manatee, but you're kind of open and subject, depending on the direction of the wind, you can get hammered down here with winds. And the pilots obviously know that, and they use that in their decision criteria for how many tugs. Correct, Norman? Thank you. The right turn on Tampa Bay, and again, we might have to look at the slogan, since we do bring ships down from the north and we turn them left into Port Manatee. This is a collection of things that I know our pilots like, and I asked a couple of them things we like about Port Manatee. Norman mentioned it, increase in business. No brainer. They love the business coming in. Closer proximity to the sea buoy and the port, to sea buoy versus ports to the north. Carlos mentioned it. Yes, it's a 3-hour trip. Some of the berths, typically 4 hours to the north, but some of them may drift into 4.5 hours. Inbound and outbound ranges. John Moore, they love those inbound and outbound ranges, especially when they're lit, right? Yeah. Again, I mentioned the PPUs as being the devices they use for navigation, but they also rely on aids to the Coast Guard aids to navigation, the range towers, the channel marker cans, and so forth. Those are critical too, because as everyone in the room knows, there are occasional issues with technology. So as a backup, obviously, they certainly love to have the aids to navigation. Let's see, good berth facilities, deep rafts at berths, and again, if you're not familiar with berths to the north and the pilot mindset, they like good berths, they like deep water. They like nice fenders, and Port Manatee's been doing some fender upgrades here, and I hear about it. They're like, wow, because again, that's important from the pilotage standpoint. Ease of access into and out of the port. Efficient security. A few years back, you guys, Dave, centralized security. Our pilots can get in and out of here quickly. That doesn't mean you don't have good security here. It means that you come in, security is quick, the pilots get to the ship or from the ship. There are areas to the north that pilots have to go through 3 layers of security and documentation check. And it's time, it takes extra time, obviously, to do that. Good timely line handling. It sounds simple, but for pilots and even tug operators, having that vessel come alongside, having enough line handlers, having line handlers show up on time to tie that vessel up quickly is a benefit to everyone, both financially and from a safety standpoint, because you're getting that vessel secured, especially if the weather's bad.
TWIC cards, is that the reason why our security turnaround is faster? I know a lot of ports don't have TWIC readers.
That would be correct.
Oh, good.
And in some of the port areas to the north, some of them read TWIC cards, some of them read the Port Tampa Bay port passes. Some of them still are looking at driver's license. So it's a mixed match of what they want to see in some of the other port areas. And you also have private berth operators up north that aren't in Port of Tampa jurisdiction. So they have their own rules and requirements. So again, here it's easy. You got a gate, you show your TWIC, you're in or you're out. So it is something that our folks feel is important.
On the subject of lines, I've asked Carlos this before and I don't remember the answer. Are our longshoremen unionized?
I couldn't answer that question.
Oh, this sounds like a long answer.
For us, they're efficient, and that's important.
Okay.
So the line handling is handled by port staff.
Okay.
As compared to other ports, whether it is an ILA or LWC type of union,
Right.
Here we're doing our own line handling. And I think part of it is that we really want to provide that service to the ships as soon as they dock. And that docking or that line handling service is...
I think you're too close to his microphone.
Yeah, thank you. It's 24/7. So we're docking ships at midnight, 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock
Right.
in the morning. When that ship arrives, when you consider that they're paying maybe $40,000, $50,000 a day for that ship.
Sure.
5 hours, an hour a day out there, losing $50,000 is obviously not a good thing. And though the ability to come in and shoehorn them in is also a big benefit that helps us attract more ships.
Okay, good to know. I'm, a lot of experience in the port of Skagway up in Alaska, and it's a little more routine with cruise ships coming in on a routine schedule, but we did have some bulk carriers that came in as well, and I know they were unionized, and those guys were pulling $75, $100 an hour, and you inherited the job when your father died, basically. So
We do have union labor also for the stevedoring though, but not for the line handling.
Gotcha. Anyway, smart way to do it. Thanks.
Thank you, Carlos. Okay, our pilot workforce, again, 24/7, 365. We've got 7 pilot boat operators that work out at the Egmont station, and we do have a pilot boat now working uptown, so we've got a couple boat handlers up there. 5 dispatchers, 3 administrators, which includes me, our office staff. We've got an office manager, myself, and a part-time bookkeeper. So it's a pretty lean staff. We currently have 14 full pilots, 6 deputy pilots. The deputy training program, it takes just under 3 years to train a deputy. So it's a long, intense training. I tell them it's boot camp because they don't get much time off. I mean, when they're here as a deputy, they got to train, and they eventually handle vessels on their own, and they still have to train. And it takes about pretty close to 3 years. The training program is actually mandated by the state, and the training program is approved by the state. So it's a state mandate for the training program. And we've got, of the 6 deputies, we've got 2 that are relatively new, 2 that'll graduate next spring, and the other 2 the following spring. So the deputies are spread out. Okay, this is an important slide for Port Manatee. Providing port communities with maritime information. We have a website. Our dispatchers keep the website updated as far as vessel scheduling. You do have a cooperative vessel service in Tampa. We basically provide or perform the harbor master services for all ports in Tampa Bay. Any inbound or outbound vessels, they report to us, our dispatchers, and our dispatchers load them into the system. It's on a first come, first served basis. That's important for Port Manatee. You know, there's no bias in our operations. It's first come, first served. Well, let me back up. There are security zones and safety zones that get preferential treatment, but that's Coast Guard mandated. But basically, we control traffic in and out, and again, that's good for Port Manatee versus having some other entity, a harbor master, controlling traffic. Does that make sense? So, again, and part of my function is I try and keep the website updated as far as channels and berths and information, and you can go in 24/7 and check out vessel scheduling. Community support. We do support multiple maritime organizations, few of them there, PTMI, both Propeller Club, Tampa and Port Manatee, Anchor House, Tampa Port Ministries, and the Propeller Clubs. We're members of the Florida Harbor Pilot Association, which is sort of our lobbying group for all pilot associations in Tampa. You guys are well aware of those folks. And we also interact with the American Pilot Association quite frequently. And I think that might be it. Port Manatee, the right and right-left-hand turn on Tampa Bay.
we have a few.
I had to throw that one out. When I did that slide, I'm thinking, we actually turn vessels left in there sometimes, too.
We have a few commissioners.
Questions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for organizing the presentations, Carlos, because I really enjoyed hearing about the pilot's perspective and the tow company perspective. So I was interested in learning about scheduling. So how far in advance is the ship scheduling with you guys? And then I heard you say first come, first serve as you arrive closer.
Well, we require, as you know, I'm going to be careful with this answer. We only require to move ships in or out a 2.5-hour notice. For inbound vessels, Coast Guard requires for foreign flag vessels a 96-hour notice. Now that doesn't always get to us as far as ordering up. On inbounds, we'd like to have 24-hour notice to get them on the schedule and to make sure Coast Guard's cleared that vessel for arrival. But you know, if we have a ship show up and they say they want a pilot, we'll have a pilot in 2.5 hours, as long as Coast Guard has cleared that ship for arrival. And again, there's a lengthy Coast Guard approval process for foreign flag vessel arrivals. Now, once our dispatcher gets the notice for a vessel to arrive, that's where the first come, first serve is. They plug it into the schedule, date and time, and it's there, it's fixed. The only thing that may change that schedule is if we have a safety or security zone that's mandated by Coast Guard. The safety zones are the anhydrous ammonia type vessels, and of course when we had cruise ships, we had safety zones for cruise ships too. But other than that, it's first come, first serve. And I do occasionally, I'll be honest, occasionally get calls from someone in the port community who say, can our vessel come in before that one? And I'm like, no.
I'm sure you do. And is there a different protocol for petroleum carriers or, you know, flammable type of materials?
Not petroleum. Anhydrous ammonia is protected under security zone, but petroleum is not.
Thank you.
Now, if we get into hurricane situations and port closures, then petroleum becomes a little more important. And then Dwayne's colleague Norman's colleague Dwayne in the back. then if there's a lengthy port closure, we do have protocols for which vessels come in first, and actually it's petroleum and perishables. So if you've got a Del Monte ship, a Del Monte ship's going to get some priority in coming back in because they have perishables. petroleum for the obvious reason, especially if petroleum supplies are low.
Right, and my colleague, Mr. Van Ostenbridge, just said, ask him what happens during a hurricane. So during a hurricane, what do you do? Do you say...
I go home. That's what I do.
Because we don't want to defer them to another port, but safety is of the utmost concern, so...
There is, and again, Norman's colleague, Dwayne, he is the chair of what is called the Port Heavy Weather Advisory Group. And you have membership and participation in the Port Heavy Weather Advisory Group. We do not shut down the port. I mean, it's Coast Guard mandated, and we had a tiny closure for the last storm as far as ship traffic. You know, when the port closes, it creates a lot of obvious work for us. You're going to have vessels stack up outside waiting to get in. They may, if the hurricane's going to be a threat out at Anchorage, they're not going to be sitting out there, but they'll be out in the middle of the Gulf waiting to come in.
But my question ultimately would be, they're out there riding it out.
Yeah.
Right? There's a hurricane in the Gulf. You're not clearing the Gulf of ships. They ride it out, baby.
No, they can do what they want. And this last storm, there were some that stayed at anchor. And they rode out the storm, and they wanted to come back in as soon as they can.
That thing wasn't a real storm.
That's a risk analysis that the operators do. I can tell you the petroleum guys are a little more risk adverse. They're not going to sit out there with a full tanker of gasoline.
Okay. 'Cause I'm just imagining Irma, this massive storm the size of the state of Georgia coming in, you know, and it's like a Cat 5.
They're going to go hide.
That's my question.
They're going to go somewhere.
Okay. That's
other
my
than
question.
outside of Tampa
Just like
Bay.
a cruise ship would, you know, dodge the storms, right?
Same thing.
Yeah.
But again, if we have a 2 or 3 day port closure because of a hurricane, if Coast Guard shuts us down, you know, when the hurricane passes, the winds go down, Coast Guard does channel surveys, ATON surveys, and they say, okay, to open back up. That's when we get slammed with ships, not only ships wanting to come in, but you've got some inside that want to get out.
Sure.
And that's a challenge for us as pilots. It's a challenge for the tug companies because you have finite resources. You know, I've got 10 pilots on watch and a total of 8 tugboats in the port.
And when the port closes during a hurricane, do you clear the berths and tell them hit the road or what?
No, that's Coast Guard's job.
That's Coast Guard's job.
And they can do that, and they do make some vessels leave port. I'm not going to speak for Captain Matt Thompson, but yes.
Okay, because I know there are some dangers involved in
Yeah.
the vessel staying in port.
Coast Guard evaluates which ones are safe to stay in port.
Right.
You know, and again, I've mentioned some of the hazmat vessels, and those are typically the ones who have to go somewhere.
Yeah, and a cargo ship will go into much rougher water than a cruise ship. I mean, crates of bananas aren't going to write a bad Yelp review.
The vessel operators, they do their own risk analysis on where they want their ships to be or not be, and again, for the obvious reason, the petroleum guys are pretty adverse to risk.
Right, sure, understandable.
They're not going to want to have anything bad happen.
Right.
So again, and a good point is when we get into those clusters of a lot of business, you got finite resources. You've got 8 tugboats. You got 10 pilots. Well, I can call some off rest, but then that gets into the orchestration of moving all these ships in or out and coordinating tugboats and making sure we get everybody back in business as quickly as possible.
A proper harbor master for Tampa Bay, or no?
We are very proper.
Okay, you used to have somebody who was essentially like the harbor master, who was like overseeing all traffic coming in and out of that.
No, there's not. The closest thing to it is CVTS up in Tampa, Cooperative Vessel Traffic Service.
Okay.
But they do not manage traffic.
Gotcha. Thank you.
We manage traffic, and I will say one more time, it's a benefit to Port Manatee that we manage traffic, and I'll leave that at that.
Commissioner Ball.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's so good to be back at the port, just so you know. I've really missed it. But let's get back to that shoehorn situation, okay? Because I am a firm believer that we really need to be moving forward with getting some new docks ready. And is this the norm at most ports? I mean, I know I've toured 2 or 3 different ports in Florida. I mean, is this, in order to increase business and continue increasing the way that we've been doing, we probably, you know, are we at the point where we really need to address this? I mean, obviously, weather plays a part, et cetera, in this shoehorn situation. I love that term. So, you know, are we one of the few ports experiencing this?
I'll make a quick, I'll give you a quick answer, and then I'll
Okay.
let Carlos answer the other half of it. There are some other areas in Tampa. I only have experience with this port. I've worked here, like I said, 36 years, but I have traveled a lot, and it's not unique to Tampa or Manatee. And in Tampa, and I mentioned Port Sutton, we do some shoehorning in Port Sutton too. It's not uncommon. But the challenge that we've seen, and again, I've seen it in my career here, is ships are, I'm not going to go back to the slide, ships are getting longer, ships are getting wider, and the infrastructure hasn't grown. So that's and whether it's Manatee or other ports, and you hear, and I hear, I had some gentlemen in from Galveston last week. Similar issues, you know, bigger ships, deeper drafts, wider ships, and the port infrastructure is the same. Now, you do have an expansion project that we're excited about, the Berth 4 expansion project that I believe is still ongoing. So the pilots love hearing that when you know, when infrastructure is going to be increased, especially size, length. So that's my best answer to that question.
Sounds like more trips to DC, Dave. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Yeah, following up on the question of, you know, most sports have this issue when we become successful. I think I'll turn this off, I think, because of the feedback. There we go. Happens in most sports when they become successful. But in addition to Berth 4 and the expansion to the north, we also, as you say, Commissioner, we're looking at an expansion also to the south, adding another berth to the south. That's also needed, and starting that. And that would be totally within our capabilities to do that, with the help, of course, of the board and the help of our partners in Washington and at the state level. So we can add a berth 15 to the south and a berth to the north, therefore expanding the port as most ports grow.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So the momentum is there, and the justification is there for the investment, because really we're oversubscribed. So retaining what we have is very important. At the same time, expanding it to make sure that we can grow.
Terrible problem to have.
No, right. So before we go into the formal business, I was just connecting to the ship traffic during the storm. Maybe because I watched the movie Perfect Storm last night, and I was kind of curious how all that took place. But the way I'm looking at it, most of the time we know that the storms, maybe 3 or 4 days ahead, and that gives the ships an opportunity to redirect. Am I looking at that the correct way?
Yeah.
Yes, they get notice. They get notice from Coast Guard.
Right.
Starts to send out port community information bulletins when the storm is still down in the Yucatan, for example. So they kind of, if they're smart operators, they're paying attention. If the vessel operators are smart, and most of them are now, they start paying attention and they start making those decisions on their own. Do I go to Tampa or not? Or do I wait a few days and see what that storm's going to do? So, and again, Coast Guard is lighting folks up with communication saying storm's on its way, be vigilant. And as a storm gets closer, the Coast Guard notices get a little more intense. And then, we're going to close, hopefully by the time we've closed the port, anything that has needed to leave is gone. Anything that was headed this way has diverted out into the middle of the Gulf or held up. In the case, the petroleum all comes from the Gulf Coast. Well, most of it anyway. We do get a few foreign cargoes. But again, those guys will hold out in Texas or Louisiana and wait until they see what that storm's going to do.
Right.
And then on the flip side, like I said, then we get hammered with vessel traffic in a 24, 48 hour period.
And one more thing. I had two unfortunate experiences when I was a youth here in Manatee County. And you kind of touched on it, and I had a discussion. I was actually born in school when the fog impacted the Skyway, and that tragic incident took place. And I was also in school at Manatee High when the space shuttle went down. You know, we were, yeah, I was. We was actually at school. You know, it was a science thing. Our science teacher, Mr. Smith, it was something that we followed all the way through. But you made a comment about the fog, and basically what you just gave me to understand is once the ship runs into a fog, you know, it stays on its path. Am I correct? It does not try to say.
We sincerely hope so. Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, they especially if it's a vessel. If it's a vessel that has a deep draft and it's in the channel, there's no place to go.
Right.
They got to keep going forward. There's no bailouts in Tampa Bay for deep draft vessels, inbound or outbound. So yeah, and you know, 1980 was the Skyway incident, and in 1980 they didn't have PPUs. You know, they didn't have the technology.
That's right.
And shipboard technology has improved as well. So there's been significant upgrades in shipboard technology. But I hope that answered your question.
Thank you. Do we have any other commissioners?
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And now we'll go to we got some feedback from someone.
Yeah, still have feedback. Maybe a little bit better this way.
Right.
Sorry about that. No, I wanted to add that when we were talking about the closing the port, it's the closing the port water side. The port remained open land side for deliveries, and the port remains open through the storm for any trucking company or customer that wants to come in, pick up cargo, and take it to the store, take it to their home, or take it wherever. So the port land side, very, very, I mean, it hasn't closed since I've been here, and I don't think it has closed for more than a few hours land side, you know, for a very long time. So land side, we continue operating until the Highway Patrol tells the truckers, get off the road. And that, of course, we can't help that.
All right. Anything else on that? Now we will go to the consent agenda, and I do want to bring to the attention that item D, as far as discussion of the travel and the proprietary activity policy update, will be pulled, and it will be discussed at another board meeting, and I'll ask at another authority meeting. And if there are any questions, I will answer them, and we can go from there.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of the consent agenda with item D removed.
Do we need a motion to continue item D? Because it is an agenda item.
Right. And the intent is to have a discussion with the clerk and the legal from the Port Authority. And we set that up, and then once that conversation takes place, we'll bring it back to the authority.
Okay.
Right.
That doesn't answer my question. Do we need a motion to continue it?
Yeah.
I need a legal
Normally
person
we
to answer
do.
that.
Go ahead.
I just need a yes or no. Do we need a motion
so.
to? I can just pull it, and then we can bring it back, right?
You can say, I mean, if we brought back.
Right. Yeah.
August meeting.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's what we'll do. We'll pull it.
Usually we pull it from consent, but we still.
Well, I thought it wasn't going to even make the agenda, to be honest with you, but it was already printed out. So,
Okay.
Right.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, but with
We need a second to
Misty's
the
mass,
motion.
I couldn't hear if you said B or D.
D as
D.
in dog.
D
D.
as in dog, thank you.
D.
We need a second to the motion.
Yeah,
Can I
Mr.
second?
Chairman, can you elaborate a little bit? I don't quite understand. I know that this is a
Travel
discussion that has been going on for probably 3 or 4 years,
Well,
so I don't know what's
at this
happening
point,
here.
I would rather for the conversation to take place between the legal and the clerk, and then bring it back to the authority. And I would just ask for it to go in that direction, if that's okay, ma'am.
Not
Would that be
micromanaging.
port legal you're talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right.
Okay.
We need a second to the motion.
Can I second it?
Oh, I'll second.
Right.
Who made the motion?
Okay, I made the motion.
Yeah,
More
and
second.
we got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
And it passed 1, 2,
6-1.
6-2, 5-2?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
Can you raise your hand as the ayes?
Oh.
And the nays? Okay, thank you.
So I have a quick question for legal. Is it the request of council that we continue this?
I know.
It
It's
was-
like we don't
it was
Can it not be
actually-
discussed now? Is that, you prefer that, or?
She needs a mic.
Right.
Okay.
The request was made by the clerk that we
Yeah.
pull it and discuss it?
Right.
Okay.
Is there a reason it needs to be discussed in private and it can't be discussed now at this
No,
meeting?
what's that all about?
I don't know what the
Let him just,
I asked to go in that direction and then bring it back to y'all.
okay.
I just assume discuss it now. I mean, we're here.
Right, but I don't think at this time that's the best. We're not gonna
Okay.
leave anything out, trust me.
Okay,
All
I'll
right.
follow your guidance.
All right.
I
Thank
don't
you.
have a choice.
Yeah, we've already voted on, you're right. So can we move can we move to item 5? Southgate expansion?
Yes.
Wait, we still need to do the consent agenda, don't we? We just voted. I thought that was the motion to pull the.
Okay.
It sucks.
I don't even know what we're doing.
Right, this is what took place. There was a motion on the board, Commissioner Cruz, in order to approve the consent item outside of item D, and then it was voted on.
Agreed.
Right, and it was agreed.
I understand what we're doing relative to the logistics. I'm asking, I still don't understand why it was
We'll
yanked
find
out
out.
and ignored in the first place. I mean, if this is a board that's supposed to set policy, then it seems like the discussion of policy would be an appropriate place to have it, as opposed
Yeah, I feel like
to
we're
pulling
being
it
left out.
in the middle of a meeting, when I literally just discussed this with people in the board like an hour ago. I thought it was an ongoing thing.
Right.
I don't have a button to push, but I'm going to wave my
Yes,
hand.
sir.
Could maybe the clerk elaborate for us?
Well, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that, but I
I mean,
think
she
that's-
made the trip
that-
as well.
I think that wasn't the, right, I
Oh.
don't think that's not why she's here.
Well, luckily you're here.
Right, that's not why she's here. The intent was for us to have a meeting. Right. Right.
Does it require a shadow meeting?
Yeah, is this a shade meeting?
A shade meeting,
That's
sorry,
taking
shade meeting.
place, or-
They're just
Oh, it's
trying
not
to-
even at that level.
There's no conspiracy. I think
Mr.
you're just trying to
Chairman.
clean something up.
This is not an uncommon occurrence.
Right.
Items from consent agendas are pulled every day,
Right.
both in our other roles and here. This is a very customary thing to happen.
Right.
Well, I'm not worried about the process. I was just wondering why, and I'm not getting a straight answer as to
Well,
why it was pulled.
I'd like to follow
other
the
than we can't
the
talk about
guidance
it.
of the clerk and allow the meeting to take place, and I'm sure it'll come back and go from there. Is that okay, clerk? Right.
So we're doing this strictly off of the request of the clerk is requesting that
Actually,
we
it's a-
not discuss
actually,
our
it's-
agenda item
Actually,
in
it's a
public.
consensus between both. Right, and we
The
pulled
clerk
it and
and
we
our
voted,
legal.
we pulled it and we voted on it and move forward. So I don't see where we're wrong at this point. But I understand the concern, but trust me, we will address it when the meeting takes place.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I can help, if you don't mind, sir. You know, I think what I'm hearing here is that obviously you've had some discussion.
And I've said
The
it.
rest of us have not, so we're kind of
In the
in the
dark.
blind here,
Right.
in the dark.
And that's
And-
common.
and
from
that's
the
not
clerk.
appropriate.
Right. No, that's common. That's
Yeah.
common.
No,
That's common.
it's
There's a lot
not.
of conversation that take place. Go, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, Carol's before me.
Mr. Chair, this happens every county commission meeting.
Yeah.
Our attorney will talk to whatever issue's coming up and say, let's just pull it, it's not ready to come to the board yet.
Right.
There's
I hear that all
always-
the time during my briefings.
Right.
And our agendas are published so early now that they're on the agenda, but then they get pulled off to another meeting.
But it wasn't
This
brought
is
up
no
during the
big
briefing,
deal.
and it's not our
No.
council who's requesting it.
doesn't-
It's
Not
the
correct.
clerk who's requesting
This
it.
is, so what? You don't respect our clerk? I do.
I don't
know
always agree
why.
with our clerk, and I
I
just
don't-
want
Well,
I want
and
her
I'll
to
do-
elaborate on it, and I'm being told no.
This-
In all due honesty, I asked for the meeting for both to come together so we can get on the same page, and then we bring it
So
to the
there's
board.
something
So it's
we're
not
not
even
on
the
the same
clerk.
page about.
Yes.
Okay.
And I do need to correct a statement that was just made.
By me?
No, sir. In a commission meeting, it is not the way things are done. If an item is pulled, every commissioner is briefed by the county attorney and the county administrator. Every commissioner knows everything going on
No, that's
as to why things are being pulled
It's
or
not
not.
true.
So, you know what? I disagree with that statement. I think we have a right to know what's going on, this Port Authority members, as we do. I can tell you I was chair of this port for 3 years. Never was anything taking place behind the scenes that all the Port Authority members didn't know about. I don't feel like we should be kept in the dark. I think this seems to be rather important, and I'm not sure what it's all about. But obviously, Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming that you are aware of whatever is happening here. And I don't feel that the rest of us should be in the dark as to what's happening.
Ms.
But that's up to you, sir.
Yes, and it is. And thank you for allowing that. And I'm not all the way on the same page, which is why I called the meeting myself. I asked for it. And Commissioner Cruz.
All I was going to say is just from a, part of this, maybe everyone who's been here can educate me, but the agenda's done. We have amended agendas for every meeting, and people can do things like take it off if the attorney decides to take it off. Once you have a final agenda, a posted noticed agenda for a noticed meeting, and it's in front of our faces, it doesn't seem like it should ever just be arbitrarily pulled by one person. Just like we tell Vanessa at our own meetings, a chair can always be overwritten. So you may make the statement as a chair that you personally would prefer to not discuss this item, but that doesn't mean if a majority of a board says, no, it's on my agenda, it's official as of right now, this is a legal agenda, I believe we would at least need to vote to table this to a future meeting pending that, because now it's official. This is part of our meeting, for better or worse, and I don't think any individual chair or clerk or attorney should have the individual right to yank one of my agenda items, Vanessa, anyone's agenda item. This is my agenda item now. So I think this board needs to vote to defer this thing.
Mr. Chairman, I do not understand the discussion and the angst that I'm hearing. This is a very common practice to remove something from a consent agenda. There must be more to this item than I know.
That's what we're trying to figure out.
I agree. It doesn't seem like it's something important enough.
Can you hold on for a minute? Can
I was
you hold
technically
on?
on the table.
Yeah. Well, you want to finish, sir?
Yes. Go ahead. Do whatever you want.
Okay, from where we are right now, my position is for us to, we voted on it for it to be pulled. We voted on it for it to be pulled, and let's move at that, and we will have the meeting Friday, and we'll bring it back to the board. Now, when it came up, and this was about 2 weeks ago, I asked for it to be pulled, to be honest with you, and I thought it wasn't going to make the agenda.
That's within your authority.
And that's within my authority.
Yes.
And I thought it was going to be pulled. I thought it wasn't going to be here, but it was already posted here, and then that's when the issues came up. But I think the meeting set Friday? Is the meeting set Friday? And it's nothing, nobody's doing anything wrong, trust me.
Can we please move on?
Yes, we.
I'm on the board before we move on.
Okay.
Denise?
Go ahead, bud.
I'll speak for me. So at the meeting,
What meeting?
So port members, if we could tune in.
Go ahead.
Well, I'll wait. It's okay. I understand what they're doing is important. So I think I would say, and I would hazard a guess that some people on the Port Authority would agree, that Friday at the meeting that y'all have, we would just encourage you that if that meeting comes to where it's a lot of talk about policy that's being made, that any changes in your policy then after the discussion be brought to us and not be agreed to at that time. And that's all it is.
And that's the other, this is not even nothing that we voted on, it's standard practice, so we're not doing anything off grid or anything like that. So, if so, with all due respect, we'll just have the last comment on this and then we'll move to the next item.
Well, I was just going to say, in all due respect to our chairman, I have no clue what the deal is and why they're meeting. In all due respect to our chairman, I'll wait until the next meeting. There's no policy that can be set without the board voting for it. So obviously there's a glitch and they got to ask questions. I don't know what it is, and it's not, I'm not going to micromanage, but when it comes to set the policy, it will come before us. Am I correct, attorneys?
Of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm okay. And in all due respect to our chairman, I'm going to wait. I don't have any idea what this is about.
Okay, we'll move on to item 5.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, item 5 refers to the expansion of our ability to handle additional trucks at our Southgate complex. So we would look to your consideration to approve item 5.
What's the start of the board?
Motion to approve the Southgate expansion contract award as described in the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion on the board and a second. Are there any commissioner comments? We're gonna go to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Passes 7-0. Keep moving.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, I don't know at what point you might want to have the clerk talk about the new position of the new finance director. It's up to you, Mr. Chairman. We can do it now, but in an effort to not to have the clerk here longer than necessary.
No?
You're
Yeah,
at-
I think you need a microphone.
I said sure. There's a mic right there, clerk.
Where's the mic? There you go.
Thank you. This is Kim Wilder. She's our new finance director, and she's been with our office for about a month now. You took over that role as finance director. She is a native of Charlotte County, and she has a bachelor's degree in accounting from Florida State University and a master's degree in accounting from the University of South Florida. She is a certified government finance officer and over 20 years in government accounting and 5 years as a public accounts auditor for the Auditor General's office. She has 15 years with the Charlotte County Clerk of the Circuit Court and Finance Department, and she was the director and held many senior accounting positions while there. And she came to us from Tallahassee's clerk's office, where she was the finance director for 2 years. So this is Kim Wilder. So if you see her face, this is Kim.
Welcome.
Welcome, welcome, Kim.
Yeah.
And thanks for bringing us, clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you. Executive Director comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We now move to Executive Director comments, if it's okay with the board, unless there are any other comments.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go over what's happened while COVID was happening. So we're continuing to diversify our imports, and we have the company here, World Direct Shipping, that's growing exponentially. And one of the latest initiatives has been to try to bring in new commodities that before have been brought here by air. And so bringing flowers by ship, by container, is a whole new business. I think that has a great opportunity to expand because it is a much more efficient way, especially from Mexico, to handle flowers as opposed to coming in from other parts of the world by plane. So this is a new initiative. You're going to find these flowers at your local florist, and they're coming in through your port. So to the juice, to the bananas, to the pineapples, to the avocados, now we're adding flowers. The initiative between the county and the port on MCAT is up and running. The whole premise, as you know, is to be able to bring to the port individuals or groups that need transportation. It's still on a trial period. It's a call service. They call the night before to have the bus service pick them up, and they can come to the port for those who, whose car is broken down, they don't have a car, and the jobs at the port are really, growing dramatically, as you know. In fact, one of the companies here that we'll bring up is short on truck drivers, as we know, there's a shortage on truck drivers. It's a chlorine company being manufactured here at the port, a new company for Manatee County. They're paying hazmat, hazardous materials drivers, $80,000 to $90,000 a year to go back and forth. So certainly a living wage. Okay, if you're training, $60,000 to $70,000 a year, and they're probably short, several hundred drivers. So again, an opportunity for the Manatee Technical College and the port to collaborate, as we have done with welders for air products and so on. So we have that capability now to be able to bring those that don't have transportation. Again, we continue to expand. We are going to increase the container yard to allow for more container handling, which is one of our fastest growing business sectors. Of course, we have Carlos Diaz here. He's still here? He stepped out. Okay. So World Direct Shipping, the company you heard about before, also known as the Cal Farmers Market, that bought 1 ship, bought 2 ships, bought 3 ships. A couple of weeks ago, went and purchased 400 plus acres of contiguous land for development next to the port. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Part of it was from the Reeder family, who thought they were never going to sell that. And part of it was from another developer. And the idea is that the piece of land to expand the airport, they required that additional, triangle up there on the right side to expand the airport. And so the Port Manatee Airport, it has expansion capabilities, but it didn't without that additional orange triangle. It's a huge investment. I don't recall the last 30 years or so at ports that any private company has purchased that much land next to the port. It's a commitment by the company to grow, and it's essentially a good seal of approval that the port's doing the right things. And again, it brings jobs, it brings opportunities, and it brings enormous expansion.
Carlos, can I ask a question about that? That's in our TIF, right? I mean,
That-
oh,
yeah,
good.
correct.
So that's the first big purchase in our TIF, because our
Huge
TIF has
purchase.
not been doing well for years.
Correct.
Great.
The TIF, and also now, so we have Air Products there. They expanded.
Yep.
This organization, also Allied New Technologies, that invested about $60 million in a chlorine plant. And one of their biggest customers is Manatee County for water treatment. So it's, interesting dynamic there. And also, of course, the other businesses that are expanding, like FedEx around the port, that's been there for quite a while. So it's a kind of a verification that, the port across the street, as it relates to the port itself, has great opportunities. And so the largest, over 411 acres of land.
There's a lot of communication that's going on about this 400-acre purchase, and it was great. We actually had lunch. We actually had lunch with the owners of World Direct, and the economic development potential that's coming to these 400 acres is exciting. There's a lot of conversation going on, and we should be bringing more to you here shortly. This is an exciting opportunity for the area, the district, more importantly, for the county.
Good.
So again, the port continues to expand, and on private property, and I have the gentleman here, a Peruvian company just purchased Manatee scrap metal. That's renamed it to Aceros Port Manatee, or meaning steel. So this organization is going to be exporting all of the scrap metal we don't want to Peru. Great deal for us, great deal for the port, great deal for them. So we have the principal at this point, Diego Arrospide. Diego, if you have to come up to say a few words. Come up here, please. Significant financial investment on County Peru. Here.
Carlos, thanks for the opportunity. I work for Aceros Arequipa. It's a Peruvian corporation, as Carlos said. We have 60 years in business dedicated to the production of steel and melting steel, recycled steel. We need 1.3 million tons of recycled steel per year, so that's a lot. Locally, we get 30% maybe, and the rest we have to import. So all the imports we do, it's mainly from the US. So in order to reduce the dependency in third parties, we decided to come to the US. We're happy to be here with our first company, obviously happy to be here in Manatee, and more happy to be so close to the port. We're like 3/4 of a mile. We expect to export 100,000 tons per year at the beginning, and then we'll try to move. We expect to grow maybe 20% in the next years. The company is going to be run by Mr. Joseph Bernhardt, who is here with us. He's going to join the company in a couple of weeks. So we're very, very excited to be here, and thank you for your opportunity.
Thank you. We have one commissioner.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question? So it's so nice that you're being introduced. Thank you. Are you doing any processing of this? Is it only steel that you're exporting, or are you exporting other metals?
We process the metal and we separate the ferrous scrap from the non-ferrous, that
Yes.
is aluminum, copper.
Right.
And to Peru, we only export the ferrous scrap. That's what we need. The rest, that it's, well, it can be like 4% out of all what it's gathered. It's all domestic to some traders, or exported in small quantities in containers. But what we're gonna do is the big ships, trying to do 4 ships per year at the beginning. But well, I don't know if that answered the question.
Yeah, didn't they have a big shredder on that site? You
Yes.
put a whole car in, like a coffee grinder, and
Yeah,
it's...
correct.
Yeah,
We
you
have
still
it.
have that?
Yes, and
Yeah?
we're still running it. Yeah, and that's where
Wow.
we get the separation of the ferrous and non-ferrous.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Any more commissioners? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Jay. So it's another, foreign company investing in the port. That's what we want, investing in Manatee, not just our local, let's say, or U.S.-based companies. This is a commitment. This is a clear signal that the port and the Port Authority's viability continues to be very strong. This even made the news, I mean, we had gator paving, literally, on board, and we were told this alligator was about 50 years old, which makes him one of our first employees, So we had to retire him. We gave him the FRS package, and he went into drop, and he was removed somewhere to another location
Was
in
he the
Florida.
one that's been in the pond for years?
I'm not sure. We have a few in the pond. We're trying to put him in the drop program, but they're not going easily.
So he retired to Arcadia.
Yeah. So that's all in my remarks. I did want to point one thing, commissioners. If you noticed, maybe the Seaport Manatee. We're trying to take baby steps towards rebranding the name as opposed to the jail.
Right.
And maybe the term seaport might go towards that to differentiate it. And therefore, we are a seaport and we are in Manatee, so that new logo which we're trying to develop might help in that direction, and we'll be bringing up to you other kind of rebranding opportunities that will go along with this new name.
Right.
It's not official, but we're looking in the future for your approval.
I like that.
Look into that.
I just want to make a comment on that. And we talked about kind of looking at a new name for the port, and the reason why from my community, well, when I talked to Carlos about it, is how the Port Authority is looked at. And the Port Authority is looked at, as far as connected to Port Manatee in the jail. So, looking into it, I'm very appreciative of it, and thank you. I like that, and I'm sure we'll have to vote on it when you bring it back to us and things of that nature.
Yes.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, those are all my remarks. Thank you very
We
much.
can go
Oh, there's
in-
one more thing, sorry. Yep. Sorry, yes. We hired a new corporate communications coordinator, Sunny, there we go, Sunny Venable, local resident in Lakewood Ranch. Yeah, so keep our, and so, we're adding to our staff. The prior individual was there, had to move on because her husband was relocated with the Air Force. So we're sorry to see her go, and very happy to found Sunny for the position.
Welcome, Sunny.
Her full name is Sunshine. Am I going to call her Sunny, by the way? Literally Sunshine, right?
Oh, really?
Sunny is the short name that we give her for now.
Carlos, I'm drawing a blank, did our friend leave? Oh,
Virginia's
okay,
still
that's what I thought. Oh, she's in Germany, okay,
Yeah,
thank
there
you.
was Caitlin Mullen. Lynn
Yeah, I
was
remember,
here for
yeah.
a while, for about a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, she was.
And no, her husband
So
was in
Virginia's
the-
still here, okay.
Right, still here. Right.
Anything else? We'll go to Commissioner comments. Commissioner Cruz?
Commissioner comments?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah, it's great to be back here. I've been talking to Carlos about getting back here since I was campaigning. First time I was in this room, and I kept hearing we're coming back, one thing or another, and I'm just glad to be here. I don't really have any comments per se. The one thing I'll say, because it was pulled and it's my commissioner comments, that's what I want. I'm going to be curious in what happens with that travel agenda, because I dug into that one pretty hard. I was asked to. I discussed it. I honestly didn't see a single thing wrong with any of the red lines whatsoever, and nothing was controversial. If it comes up, just so I could put my 2 cents in when discussion of policy comes up. If it comes up that's the prospective client thing instead of a specific name thing, and that's where kind of the holdup is, that should be standard practice. I mean, first off, the port is profitable, so they should have as much flexibility as they feel they need to do whatever travel they need to maximize profitability. And Carlos's presentation right here showed how successful they are. And as we all joke about the Port of Tampa, there is competition to get these clients in here, and running around in a situation where we have public record requests and writing down the name of every person we meet with in Peru and Venezuela and every place else is just bad business, honestly. I'm surprised this isn't a standard practice in the first place. So, people can discuss whatever they want, people can bring back whatever they want, but I'm going to be sure to make sure I'm looking at the revised version versus the version we've got right now versus the original version to see where these changes are, because I like the version that was presented to me, and if anything, I'm hoping it comes back even more flexible. If it comes back more restrictive, then when we discuss policy, I'm going to make sure I'm not, just stepping down with whatever's decided, because I think that prospective client thing should, in fact, be there. That's all.
Commissioner Ball?
Yeah. Commissioner Cruz, thank you for your comments. You were right on. I will tell you, and Commissioner Whitmore knows this, and maybe Commissioner Serbian, I don't know, I can't remember, but I will tell you that is standard practice among ports. Ports don't give out who they're talking to, who they're meeting with overseas. It's a common practice not to do that. And the reason is because I will tell you, I don't know, do we have anybody in the room today from Port Tampa?
They used to
No,
come.
I'm telling you,
They used to
every
come
time we had a
every
port meeting,
But they're watching.
well, they can't be watching it right now, but they will.
be.
Every time we've had a port meeting in the past, that port has had someone in our meetings.
Right.
We literally, and I will, Commissioner Whitmore and I, we don't agree on a lot politically. But one thing that she would have to say, and me as well, is that we were both called by DOT to a meeting in St. Pete between FDOT, I can't remember if you were there.
No.
I can't remember. But Port Tampa and Port Manatee. And I got to tell you, it wasn't because Port Manatee did or said anything wrong. We didn't. We had to sit there and kind of witness and hear what all took place by DOT. And it wasn't pleasant. So it is a very competitive business, very. And I will not personally stand in the way of the port being handicapped in some way in trying to move business forward. I mean, everybody here worked so hard to make this port grow, and they've done such a great job. And it seems to me, if that is what is going on here, and I'm going to have a conversation with the clerk, I can assure you, if that is what's going on here, there's ways to get around that so that it's not an issue. And I would think that we would have looked into that, Mr. Chairman, to move this thing forward so that we can continue doing business as we should. But that's, that's for another conversation, another meeting. But, it is very, very competitive port business. And Mr. Chairman, I know you know that. It's very tough. So, we've been very blessed at Port Manatee to grow like we have over the last 8-9 years. And I will tell you, I suspect with what I've seen and heard today, We are just getting started. So, I look forward to the next meeting, and I will have a conversation with the clerk to find out what's going on here. But there's ways around everything and anything if something is a problem. So that's all I would say. Thank you.
Commissioner Satchel? No comments. Commissioner Whitmore?
I was chair of port for 3 years, and I'm the one that actually started the introductions in the audience because of what Commissioner Boss said. So we would actually know who was in the audience, and then I actually, and we found out for ages that Port Manatee was in the back. So, yeah, and again, I mean Port of Tampa, but what I'm, this is, and we've all said this, and that's why I'm glad we're here, because when we have our Port Authority hats on, this is not government, this is a business. And we serve as the Port Authority, and this is business, and business is very competitive. So, if there wasn't something quite ready and people aren't ready to present it today, I'm fine with that. But I think what you're hearing when you do meet is we need to think of a creative way to keep our customers confidential for negotiations. Because, I met with the president of the ports in Brazil. We went all over the John Prescia and all them. It was all confidential because we also had the ports north of us that were trying to recruit them. So we just have to figure out a creative way. I'm not gonna, if you didn't feel comfortable to bring it up this time or a chair, I respect that. But I think you just have a feeling about where that we're gonna come from on this. And, we just do need to work it out because it is different. Our Port Authority, our port is different than Manatee County government as far as, public records, and I understand, but we have to figure a creative way, even if we sign numbers to the invoices versus names. Who knows? I don't even know what the issue is yet. I guess we'll find out.
My man.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to ask, I would like to change my vote on the consent agenda. I would like to hear item D now. I know it will likely fail, but I'm asking you all to reconsider the vote so that my position is correctly reflected in the record. So I'll make a motion to reconsider the vote on the consent agenda.
Right, and what that does.
I need a second, though.
Well, I don't.
Second.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, we can vote on it, but I think the vote will stay 4-3.
I think it will.
Right. So, okay, so.
2, I think it'll probably be 5-2, but
Huh?
if it was 6-1, it'll probably be 5-2, and that's fine, but I just want the record to.
It was 5-2.
Oh, was it? Okay.
All right.
Want to call for the vote?
Then call for the vote. All,
This is the vote on the motion to reconsider. Yes.
Correct.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Wait.
This is
You want to reconsider?
No, I don't want to reconsider.
I
just want to
made a request to reconsider the vote so that my
I'll give you
position
an eye
will
on
be
that one.
All in
reflected.
favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays?
Nay.
Nay. Hands.
4.
Hands for the ayes. Hands for the ayes.
Hands for the ayes.
Nays. Okay, so there's been a shift, respectfully, and now we will have to bring item D forward for discussion.
No, that was to reconsider, so now we vote on the consent agenda again.
Well, that's
No.
Now we would vote on the consent agenda again, because that was what I wanted to reconsider, was my vote on consent. Because
Okay.
consent involved an amendment to remove D.
Okay.
okay.
Oh.
The original motion was a motion to approve the consent agenda with withdrawing item D.
Correct.
That passed. He's asking to reconsider that motion. So
Okay.
now before the board is the consent agenda item,
Okay.
Including D.
including D and awaiting.
Well, we would reconsider.
So I would like to make a motion to,
Reconsider passed.
I think I noted it.
So you're now.
The motion that
Yeah.
we're reconsidering is the one to pull it,
He's
so.
breaking it off.
No.
Do we-
No.
No, the motion to reconsider was to reconsider the motion to approve the consent agenda item with
D.
taking D out.
so we'll vote on that exact
So-
motion again.
Yes, so now you have that motion that you're reconsidering. Are you going,
Okay.
the motion that you're considering is is the consent agenda,
Well,
Minus
it-
D.
minus D.
I want to ask a legal question as the chair.
That's what we voted on.
Voted on that.
Right.
Yes, I asked to reconsider that
And then he moved
vote.
to reconsider that
I know, the
motion.
point is, we voted previously to approve, the only vote we made was to approve the consent agenda with the exception of D.
Correct.
But that vote theoretically doesn't change. The only question now was, the chair moved to remove D completely off of our agenda. I had said, well, if you're going to do that, I think we should vote on it. And everyone said, no, just let it go. I think the original vote on the consent agenda is still correct because we approved all of the stuff except for.
Then you would vote the same
that
way.
was already done.
But for the record and for it to be very clear in the minutes, what I would suggest is because there was a motion that excluded D and that was approved, and now that motion has been reconsidered, that there be a motion now to
what?
either approve
Use
the
different
consent
words. Let's see how-
agenda
It's
item.
still going to be consent minus D.
Or consent minus D.
Correct.
And
Literally
then
what you just
vote,
said.
because he wanted to reconsider his vote.
Yeah.
In other words, if he wants to be able to change his vote on that. It may end up that it still passes, it may not. I don't know what the votes are gonna be.
Can I ask a
I
question?
have no idea.
Jennifer.
All of us on the same
If we
page.
vote
It's got some content we gotta look at.
I'm going to try and word this uncomplicated.
Right. We're complicated though.
If we vote and D gets approved in the consent, hypothetically, it still could come back and we could still have a discussion and change that down the road. Is that correct?
Okay, so you're asking if the board were to make a motion just to approve consent,
Consent,
period.
Period.
With D in it.
Yes.
With D in it.
Period. And that vote passed.
Right.
That's your policy. Could that policy come back at another time?
Sure.
Absolutely. We can bring back
After the meeting they
policies
have on Friday,
anytime.
it could come back and we could change our minds.
Right.
Correct?
Yes, you can
Okay.
change your policies.
I want to
at
make a
any
motion
time.
to approve consent agenda.
Second.
Yeah, me too.
And we have a motion to approve and we have a second. So can we vote on it? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any nays?
Nay.
And a bell.
One nay.
Yeah.
And a bell.
Yeah.
We had a bell.
So it passes 6-1.
And I want to clarify the reason for my nay vote is I just like to respect and collaborate with the different agencies that we have to work with. We had a request to do some more work on that item, and I respect that. And I think that it's short-sighted to approve something when we have a colleague who has asked us for a little more time.
But it can come back to us
Right.
next meeting.
It can come back.
And at this time, what we'll do, we will acknowledge the clerk, and then I'm the last on commissioner comments. and then- Okay, then you're next, then we'll go from there.
Carlos, you have 1 month to do as many golf outings as humanly possible.
Without a name on it.
Okay, Madam Clerk?
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will tell the board, I know we are meeting on this Friday. I can only meet with one commissioner, as you know. I can't meet with more than one, or we go into all that sunshine stuff. I do have meetings set as we spoke. I messaged my assistant to set up a meeting with each one of you after Friday. I am meeting with my attorney, my finance department. As you know, you are elected officials, as am I, and there are accounting principles that take place on a higher level. I will tell you, had my predecessor come and asked for something to be pulled, back in the day, commissioners knew there was something with it, because you're elected officials. We are accountable to the voters, you and I. So when I do that, it's because I'm trying to save you from something different. So your policy is your policy. At the end of the day, I have to follow the government accounting standards. I do think that this is something we can talk about. Perhaps it even is a lobbying issue. We are a unique port, and that I'm the only clerk who oversees it. The other clerks do not oversee a port. There are complexities and intrinsically intertwined issues there. They're unique to us. And I can talk to each one of you about that after Friday. I don't think this is any cause for any kind of animosity or anything like that. I would like the opportunity to explain to you what happened and what occurred and what we noticed.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good.
All right,
Keep us out of trouble.
on to commissioner comments. Commissioner Servian.
Yes, thank you. Carlos, I have a question about the Port Manatee bus service. I'm so happy that we're now doing this, and it is a pilot program. How many people are utilizing it?
Well, I don't have the latest numbers. So far, the ridership has been less than expected. Let me put it that way. But it's on demand. So therefore, nobody calls.
Nobody
The
goes.
bus transit, the transit group doesn't have to pick up anybody. So it's on demand. And we would have hoped it a bit more. They're going to leave it there for a year. And if after a year the ridership, is not sufficient to justify this, then the companies who are here, who are asking us, for this kind of service, obviously we'll have to reconsider what they're asking, because, they're not going to do that for longer than a year. It just makes sense.
Yeah, I like the idea so much because not only from a roadway congestion problem, but also from people who have transportation needs. And so I just wonder, you probably have already done this, but through a GIS system, maybe mapped where your employees are and look at where the greatest concentrations are, and then make sure that they all understand the services available. And if they're not using it, I'd like to know why. Is it because of a loss of independence, or just what are the reasons, so that maybe we could tweak it and make it work? I just really like the idea, and I hope it's a success.
We'll bring it back to you.
Okay. And then regarding the meeting, I'm so happy to be back here. It is such a pleasure always to be here. And yes, as Commissioner Whitmore said, this is very different from the governance we do at the Manatee County Commission. This is a business. Having said that, it is always very important, and I challenge my colleagues to be very collaborative and have a mindset of working together for all of us to succeed. I do want to challenge my colleagues to do that. I don't know everything, and I don't think anyone up here knows everything. And so we have to assume that there are things that we don't know and many people are working on, and let's respect that and get to the point that we need to get to move forward. So that's all I have. I thank you all very much.
Commissioner Whitmore, you've already gone.
Just in response to Commissioner Servia, the loss of independence is, I'm probably guessing, because if you call the shuttle and they pick you up, well, if you want to go somewhere for lunch, they're not going to take you down to Popey's to go to lunch. So I'm having a feeling, but it's always about marketing. I was talking to a group the other day saying there are good jobs at the port, and they go, well, where do I call? And I said, well, we're a rental port, so the tenants are independent. I said, just call Port Manatee or go on our site. But, I know on our website we do have our tenants, but remember we were talking about the tenants looking for help. How can we make it easy? Because what you're not seeing in the ridership, because here we are offering transportation, and are the tenants reaching out somehow so that we can get some people some jobs? Are they going to MTC? Are they going to the high schools? Just before school starts, they may have family members that may want a good job. $90,000 for a truck driver, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
How can we do better?
Thank you, Commissioner. The concept is that obviously we've been told by the tenants, the users, and they're doing their own efforts to reach out to people and be able to attract people. I think the market is tighter now than ever in terms of, as you can tell, someone can get a CDL and a hazmat, they're making 80 to 90,000 a year locally. But however, in an effort, as you're saying, to collaborate further with our tenants, we're going to be holding job fairs to make sure that we reach out even to those that never heard of the port, in collaboration with the tenants and in collaboration with other agencies. So more outreach, more marketing, as you said, more out there to attract these people. And the missing part of the puzzle was, well, what if they don't have a car? So we now have the way to bring them here, whether they have a car or not.
I couldn't even tell you how many, all the tenants' names that we have here, and I'm here. But major tenants, but how, I just told them to call Port Manatee.
Yes,
I know that's not what I should be doing.
No, it is. It is. We want them to call us.
Okay.
Yes, we want them to call us because we can redirect them and we can, know what other tenants are doing and try to make sure we set them up with the right tenants based on their skills. So we're happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, there's a couple of things I think we do have. We're also planning for the job fair that's coming up in October. Do y'all want to talk on that, or we'll wait till the next meeting to make sure?
I think maybe the next meeting.
Okay, so we'll be ready for that. And just in my closing statements, iron sharpens iron, and a lot of successful movements take place and collaborations take place with meetings behind scenes, meetings in the midst, as meetings after. And I support everything that was said over there with Commissioner Cruz, and Commissioner Barr. And this is a very competitive port, and it was not my intent. And if you know anything about me, I'm a born competitor. I have a lot of success as being a competitor. And with me having success as being a competitor, I know sometimes you back, and you relook at things. You find a way to strengthen your cause. You collaborate and you get on the same page. Therefore, when you move forward, you're stronger. And that's what my intent was. When we looked at the information, it was not to keep anybody out of the loop of what was going on. I would never do that. There's nothing about my 2.5 years that I put in front of you all to do anything of such things. So I don't think I would start that now. That's just not the individual that I am. It's unfortunate that sometimes people will go in that direction, but that identifies in the individual's character, and I don't have a problem with that. The only character that I'm responsible for is Reggie, and making sure that I'm doing the best that I can and be the best individual that I can be. My intent was to strengthen the opportunity in order for the port to move forward. And I don't think we've lost anything. I think we're going to still have an opportunity to do that based on the vote. Based on the vote, it's clear what we want. Now just make sure that we get everybody on the same page and then move forward. So with that being said, that close out commissioner comments and that close out the Port Authority meeting. Thank you.